Welcome back. Last hour we talked a lot about buying houses, and for every house that's bought, somebody's probably got to sell it to them. Great friend of the show, Michael Busacca, is back with us from Skyline Properties. Welcome back, Michael. How you doing?
Thanks, Ben. Things are great. And you?
I am great. Thank you for asking. Nobody ever asks. I ask them, they say great, and then we just move on. So I'm doing very well today.
Superb.
Thank you. Well, enough about me. Let's talk a little bit more about selling houses because, right now there are a lot of people buying, not a lot of people selling, but when people do decide to sell, certainly there's some really critical components that are important to that process.
Yeah, there are mistakes you just can't make. I mean, the world's best realtor cannot outsell the average realtor if all that best realtor gets are overpriced properties. Price is the prime mover at the end of the day.
And so do people have still a tendency to overprice houses?
Virtually everyone does. Everyone has that sense of attachment, the sense of pride in their home, and they can't step back and go, you know what, my property is handicapped in these three areas. And the more objective you can be about the limitations of your property, the more likely you can price it realistically and move it sooner, which is the second key to the whole process. And
so there's just this element of, getting it on and off the market pretty quickly, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Everyone these days looks on Redfin, every buyer that is, or Zillow, and they can see the market time, which in the past only us brokers could see. And now, routinely, if I hold an open house at a property that's been on the market a little long, people bring it up routinely. And the problem with that is the property could be just fine, but the perception is that there's a flaw, there's a problem, there's a reason why no one's buying this property, and you don't want to be that seller.
Because, I guess the perception is really the key point of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with buyers a lot, maybe 70% versus 30% sellers. So I get to hear everything that they wonder about a property. And when they start asking, what's wrong with this, you have a big problem to fix.
Because they're probably not the only ones asking that.
Yeah, the whole buyer pool is asking that. I mean, they really move in unison, buyers do. I mean, when the media tells them to get on the sidelines, they do it. And now when headlines say things are hot and get moving, they come out in droves. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why as a seller, you should really be concerned with the supply-demand ratio. And when the supply dries up and you have more people competing for your property, it might be just the right time for you to sell.
So, you talk about overpricing. What about, underpricing? Because I guess it's just a number, right? It's kind of it's a hook or a lure, if nothing else.
It is. It's just a starting point for negotiation. And in the past, there was a very serious risk for underpricing because there wasn't the internet. Now that price gets out to any motivated buyer, any buyer who has their financing in line and they're ready to jump on the first real property that works for them. I mean, you have to, you have to understand that with that exposure, even if the price is too low, the demand will come in, the bidding will start, and you'll get bid up to market price.
So, at some point in time, there's really not a lot of risk then because people will see it.
Exactly. You have just one risk for underpricing, and that risk is if you underprice intentionally to get bidding started and you take the first offer in the door the first day, you probably left some money on the table. But if you're patient, you wait 5 to 7 days, you typically will get all the offers you're going to get. And typically people even pre-inspect them to be more competitive. So you've, solved a bunch of problems at once. You found out your true market price, and now you have a full pending offer.
And putting that in perspective then versus overpricing, now you've been able to move your house way before there's any, problems that are perceived and maybe not even real.
Yeah, you've squashed any negative perception right out of the door.
What about how you're listing your property, how you're marketing it? You talk about online, everybody's going to see it, but isn't that kind of the, for lack of a better term, isn't that kind of the first open house?
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So you have, people are going to be looking online. That's their first perception. That's their first view into the house. You're essentially holding an open house online in some ways. That's what people are going to see. So isn't that really important the way it's presented online? Oh,
absolutely. You want to get people in the door. No one obviously going to buy a house just by what they saw online, but you want the gleam. You want the best illuminated photos. I see so many good properties with terrible photos. And a buyer who might go take a look says, I'm not going to drive 20 minutes to go see that property. The photos look terrible. But in reality...
Like, at least get the Ford Mustang that's on the cinder blocks out of the front yard.
Exactly. And all the knickknacks and all the corners and, the dog carrier and, all the Costco boxes. Just clean it up. Think of it like you want your place to be a showroom.
And that must be, that's a hard thing for people to do sometimes, isn't it?
It is. Well, and that's why, we all have to sit down with professionals at some point in our life. Whether you're talking to a doctor about, your health, your state of your health, or you're talking to a real estate professional about, hey, what really is the best strategy here? Those experienced people will tell you exactly what you should leave in the home, exactly what you should get rid of. Maybe you have some art you really love, but it's pretty odd, and it will throw off buyers who are walking through. That buyer should see the property in as neutral a light as possible.
We're here with Michael Busacca with Skyline Properties. You talk about photos and whatnot. What about videos? A lot of things are going towards video. Do you tend to think that that's something that's important or not?
I don't think it is as important as it's perceived, with the exception of some properties with some amazing panoramic views, or maybe they're sited on several acres that are all landscaped, and you want to give people that sweeping headspace you would have if you were on the property. And especially like you look today, it's rainy, and you think, well, a buyer might not come through my property when the view's out. So at that point, capture that view on a sunny day with a video. But other than that, just 15 good sharp pics usually gets it done.
And then being able to, I guess, get it on the right websites, or they pretty much all entangle the same properties, don't they?
They do. Anything that hits the MLS is picked up by any consumer website. The specific brokerages like Skyline, Windermere, Remax will pick it up, and then Redfin and Zillow, and it goes on down the list. So, there was concern early on in the internet era that you wouldn't be picked up by all the right sites. It's no longer a concern.
So really, the multimedia, you got to have a good real estate agent to help you kind of put that all together, to get the photos, to get them on the MLS in most cases. So you got to really find that right person, don't you?
You do, and I see, and we all try the do-it-yourself route, but I see a lot of do-it-yourselfers think they're really.
Do not do-it-yourself anything, Michael.
Okay.
Let's be very clear.
Exceptional. I've learned the hard way. I've tried to fix my car. I've never tried to cure an illness of mine, but I respect those that want to go on the internet and not pay a doctor, but usually you're steps behind versus steps ahead. Same thing with real estate. People want to
Plus, if you go on WebMD, you're pretty sure that you have every disease known to man by the time you finish reading one of those things.
That's true.
Yeah, you think you're going to perish in 24 hours
Oh,
without
man.
question.
I got the bird flu.
But the bottom line is you see people who think, hey, I'm going to pay Redfin or a flat listing fee brokerage just 1%, and I'll save the 2% I'd pay a full-time broker. The problem is you're making an assumption of an identical outcome, and there's the pitfall. Is that full-time broker is actually going to help you negotiate against any offer that comes in. The flat listing fee people, they make sure your data's in the MLS, and then you're on your own, sink or swim. And if you get a low offer that comes in, you don't know how to counter that effectively and get that price up to where it's reasonable.
So some of the most critical things, which in most people's mind is trying to save money by going that route, may actually end up costing them more.
Exactly. Yeah, I caution for anyone attempting do-it-yourselfer stuff to make sure you don't assume an identical outcome as whatever professional you would have used.
Yeah, well, and sometimes the saving money can cost you a lot more. As you know, I'm kind of like the anti-do-it-yourself, so my wife knows that too.
No, I fully respect on that. My wife reminds me as well.
Yeah.
Just because you
I'm like,
can't...
that's the honey don't-do list. We're here with Michael Busacca. Mike, just a couple minutes left before we have to go to break. You talk about saving money right now, and it sounds like you maybe have some clients who have started to save money using the mortgage world as one of their catalysts.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely enough competing mortgages out there that when people go out and shop it effectively, and once they get that rate, and it's not always just the lowest rate. As we've discussed on the show in the past, getting an exceptional lender, like I've worked with exceptional folks at Cobalt, I got to give you guys credit, working with that exceptional lender and combined with that low rate, that is always money ahead for a buyer.
Yeah, well, and that certainly it can really ring true if you're out buying a house or if you're selling. I mean, to make sure that that lender is going to close their loan on time. I mean, it could be a difficult time for a buyer to go get a loan and close on time. Well, that can affect the seller, and sometimes sellers need to put a little bit more emphasis on who's going to be doing the loan and who's going to be essentially giving them the money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, any listing broker has a due diligence responsibility for their seller to thoroughly investigate that buyer's lender. Yeah, there are a lot of lenders who can't perform, and that buyer will tie up your property or your client's property for 40 days or so, and then they don't perform, and you're back at square one. So, yeah, you have to have maximum foresight and go fully investigate.
Again, we're here with Mike Busacca. Michael, again, it's great to have you back. And is there anything else that you see as far as big critical key points for sellers in today's market?
If you just focus on these things, pricing, great photos in the MLS, and go with a pro, your money ahead. You're always going to net more.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've been extremely busy, so thanks for taking the time to pop in for us as well.
Anytime I can.
All right. Michael Busacca of Skyline Properties. When we come back, Faith Sheridan's going to join us for the first time. She is one of the best interior designers around, including contributing to Benjamin Moore's Color Advisory Team, Seattle Met Magazine, Lux Magazine, and the Seattle Times. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Brashenomics.